The morning rush at Harborview Cafe had just passed, leaving the little diner in its usual mid-morning lull. Sunlight filtered through the large windows, falling across the chipped wooden tables and the checkered floor that had seen better days. The cafe wasn't fancy, but it was warm, reliable, and a second home to many of the locals who stopped by on their way to work. Clara Evans, a waitress in her late 20s, moved quickly but quietly from table to table, refilling coffee cups, wiping crumbs, and checking receipts. She had been working there for 3 years. Ever since her mother's medical bills had forced her to drop out of college and take on multiple jobs, she didn't complain. Hardship had made her resilient, and she had a way of smiling through it all. A smile that made even the most hurried customer pause for a moment of comfort. That morning, she noticed an elderly man stepping into the cafe. His appearance was unremarkable. Gray hair, slightly disheveled coat, and shoes that looked worn from long walks. He moved slowly, as if the world weighed heavy on his shoulders, and settled into a booth near the window. Clara approached with her usual warmth. Good morning, sir. What can I get for you today? The man looked up, his eyes surprisingly sharp behind his thick glasses. Just a cup of coffee? Black, please. Coming right up, Clara said with a smile. She returned a few minutes later with a steaming mug and placed it gently in front of him. Here you go. Let me know if you'd like a refill. He nodded his thanks but didn't say much else. Clara noticed he didn't order food, not even a pastry or toast. She also noticed the way he hesitated when reaching into his coat pocket, as if uncertain about something. When the time came to settle his bill, just a few dollars, he patted his pockets again and sighed. Clara could see the discomfort on his face. He muttered something under his breath, maybe an apology, and looked away. Without a word. Clara picked up the check, folded it in half, and tucked it into her apron. Don't worry about it, sir. This one's on me. The old man blinked, clearly taken aback. On you. She shrugged. It's just coffee. Consider it a treat. For a moment, silence lingered. The man studied her face, perhaps trying to understand her gesture. Most people would have demanded payment, maybe even embarrassed him. Instead, she smiled gently and moved on to her next table as if it were the most natural thing in the world. He finished his coffee slowly, savoring it, then stood up to leave. On his way out, he paused by the counter. Thank you, miss. You've been very kind. Any time, Clara said, waving him off. She didn't think much of it. She had covered people's checks before, students short on change, mothers with restless kids, even truck drivers who had lost their wallets. It was just who she was. But the man didn't forget. The next day, the elderly gentleman returned. Again, he ordered nothing but coffee. Again, he looked as though he might struggle with the bill. And again, Clara brushed it off to Sir, you don't owe me a thing, she said kindly. This time he gave her a small smile. You're unusual? Unusual? She asked, raising a brow. Yes, most people. They want something in return. You don't. Clara chuckled. Well, not everything in life has to be about getting something back. Sometimes it's just nice to do a little good, you know? The man nodded thoughtfully. He sipped his coffee, watching her as she moved about the cafe, laughing with regulars, checking on an elderly couple in the corner, and sneaking a lollipop to a child who wouldn't stop crying. Her kindness seemed effortless. That day, he left without revealing much, but a quiet decision was forming in his mind. Days passed, and his visits became routine. He always ordered coffee, always sat by the window, and always spoke only a few words. But he was watching, quietly studying the young woman who treated everyone with respect, no matter who they were. What Clara didn't know was that the ordinary old man was Charles Whitmore, a reclusive billionaire whose name was rarely in the papers. He was the owner of Whitmore Enterprises, a vast conglomerate spanning real estate, tech, and philanthropy. Despite his wealth, Charles lived simply and often disguised himself in plain clothes when he wanted to observe the world without interference. Recently, he had grown disillusioned. Too many people around him cared only for his money, his power, or his influence. It had been years since he met someone who treated him as just a human being. That was why he had come to the cafe, why he had tested Clara. Pretending not to have money for a simple cup of coffee, her reaction had spoken volumes. One evening, after the cafe had closed and Clara was sweeping the floor, Charles lingered outside debating whether to reveal himself. But then he heard her manager scolding her. Clara, you can't keep giving away free food and coffee. We're running a business, not a charity. I know, Mr. Jacobs, she said quietly, but sometimes people really need it. And it's just a cup of coffee. It won't ruin us. That's not the point. You've got bills of your own. Don't be so soft-hearted. The world doesn't repay kindness. Clara smiled faintly, though her eyes looked tired. Maybe not. But that doesn't mean I should stop being kind. Charles stood in the shadows, listening. His heart stirred in a way it hadn't in years. The following week, Charles made a different choice. Instead of sitting by the window, he asked Clara if he could join her during her short break. Of course, she said, surprised. I don't usually get company on breaks. They sat together at a small table. What's your story, Clara? He asked. She laughed softly. My story? Well, it's not very exciting. I grew up here in town. My mom's been sick for a while, so I work here and do some side jobs to cover the bills. College had to wait. That sounds hard, he said. It is, she admitted. But I don't mind. She's my mom. She raised me alone after Dad left. Taking care of her is the least I can do. Charles studied her closely. There was no bitterness in her voice, only quiet strength. And what about your dreams? He asked. Clara hesitated, then smiled wistfully. I wanted to study social work. Help kids from rough backgrounds. But like I said, that'll have to wait. Charles nodded, filing the information away. Over the next month, their conversations grew longer. Clara never asked who he really was or why he came every day. She treated him like any other customer, sometimes even teasing him gently about his serious demeanor. He found himself laughing more than he had in years. And slowly, Charles began to realize something. He wasn't just observing Clara anymore. He was admiring her. Her resilience, her kindness, her refusal to let life's hardships change who she was. One rainy afternoon. As thunder rolled outside, Charles made a decision. It was time to reveal himself not just as a man with money, but as someone who could change Clara's life. But how? If he told her outright, she might treat him differently. He needed to be sure her kindness wasn't tied to his wealth. So he devised a quiet test. The next day. He arrived looking even more disheveled than usual. His coat was damp, his shoes muddy. He ordered coffee as always, but this time, when it came time to pay, he confessed softly, I don't have the money today. Would it be all right if I paid you back another time? Clara looked at him, then at the rain-soaked window. She didn't hesitate. She slipped the check into her pocket. Don't worry about it. Coffee's on me, remember? But I can't keep letting you cover me, he protested. She smiled gently. Sometimes people just need a little help. Besides, what kind of world would it be if nobody ever lent a hand? Charles's chest tightened. That was all the confirmation he needed. He left the cafe with a new plan forming in his mind. A plan that would change Clara's life in ways she could never imagine. That night, as Clara walked home in the rain, she thought about the old man. She didn't know why she felt such a pull to help him. Maybe it was the loneliness in his eyes, or the way he seemed to carry invisible burdens. Whatever it was, she couldn't shake the feeling that he was more than he appeared. And she was right. Asterisk for the man she thought was a poor, lonely stranger was in truth a billionaire, one who had been searching, perhaps without even realizing it, for someone exactly like her. Asterisk, and soon, very soon. Her act of kindness over a simple cup of coffee would change the course of her life forever. The next morning at Harborview Cafe, Clara came in early, tying her apron with tired fingers. She hadn't slept much. Her mother had another bad night, and the stress of bills piling up weighed on her. Still, she smiled when customers arrived. Her smile was her shield. The world didn't need to know how heavy her heart felt. Asterisk. As she carried a tray of coffee to a table of construction workers, she noticed the old man once again sitting by the window. But something about him looked different that day. His posture was straighter, his eyes brighter, as though a decision had lifted some invisible burden. Asterisk, she brought his usual coffee. Here you go. Same as always. Asterisk, he looked at her intently. Clara, I need to ask you something. Asterisk, of course, she said, tilting her head curiously. Asterisk, if you could change anything in your life right now, anything at all, what would it be? Asterisk, she laughed nervously. That's a big question for this early in the morning. Asterisk, I'm serious, he said gently. Asterisk. Clara thought for a moment, then shrugged. Honestly, I'd want my mom healthy again. That's number one. But if we're talking about me, I'd like to go back to school. I wanted to become a social worker. But right now, all that matters is paying rent and medicine. Asterisk, Charles's eyes softened. And if someone gave you that chance, what would you do? Asterisk, I'd take it, she said firmly. I'd work twice as hard as anyone else, because I know what it's like to struggle. Asterisk, he nodded slowly. I thought you'd say that. Asterisk, before she could ask what he meant, another customer waved her over. She gave him an apologetic smile and hurried away, unaware that her life was about to take a dramatic turn. Asterisk, that evening, when the cafe closed, Charles stayed behind. Clara stacked chairs and wiped tables while her manager counted the register. Asterisk, Charles cleared his throat. Clara, may I speak with you privately? Asterisk, she looked surprised but nodded, leading him to a quieter corner. Asterisk, he leaned forward, lowering his voice. I haven't been honest with you. My name isn't just Charles. It's Charles Whitmore. Asterisk, Clara blinked. The name rang faintly familiar, but she couldn't place it. Okay, asterisk, I own Whitmore Enterprises, he continued. Real estate, technology, several other industries. Asterisk, Clara stared, trying to process. Why to mean you're a billionaire? Asterisk, yes. Asterisk, she laughed in disbelief. You're joking. Asterisk, I'm not, he said calmly. I came here in plain clothes because I wanted to see the world as an ordinary man. Too many people treat me differently when they know who I am. But you've treated me with kindness, even when you thought I had nothing. Asterisk, Clara's mouth went dry. I didn't do anything special. It was just coffee. Asterisk, no, Charles said firmly. It wasn't just coffee. It was dignity, compassion, something I haven't seen in years. Asterisk, Clara sat back, overwhelmed. She wanted to laugh, cry, and run all at once. Why are you telling me this? Asterisk, because I want to help you, he said, and not out of pity, out of respect. You've shown me something priceless, genuine kindness without expectation. Asterisk, over the next week. Clara wrestled with disbelief. Charles Whitmore, billionaire, had been drinking her coffee every morning. But the more she thought about it, the more it made sense. His quiet eyes, his thoughtful questions, his habit of observing rather than speaking, it all aligned with someone who had seen much of the world and grown weary of it. Asterisk. One afternoon, Charles returned with a folder. He placed it on the counter in front of her. Asterisk, what's this? She asked. Asterisk, an opportunity, he said. I've set up a scholarship fund in your name. It will cover your college tuition, your books, and even a stipend to help with living expenses. You can finally pursue your dream of social work. Asterisk, Clara gasped. Charles, I can't accept this. It's too much. Asterisk. It's not charity, he said gently. It's an investment. The world needs more people like you. People who care, even when no one's watching. Asterisk tears pricked her eyes. She covered her mouth, shaking her head. I don't know what to say. Asterisk say yes, he urged softly. Asterisk word. Spread quickly around town once. Clara finally admitted the truth. Some people whispered that she had gotten lucky, that she must have charmed a rich old man. But those who truly knew Claritha regulars, who had felt her kindness, smiled knowingly. Asterisk. Her mother cried when she heard the news. Oh, baby, she said, hugging Clara tightly. All those nights you stayed up worrying, and look at you now. God must have sent that man to us. Asterisk. Clara laughed through her tears. I still can't believe it myself. Asterisk. But Charles wasn't finished. Asterisk. He arranged for her mother to see top specialists, covering every expense. He introduced Clara to colleagues at his philanthropic foundation where she could intern while studying. He even insisted that she move into a safer apartment closer to campus. Asterisk. At first, Clara resisted. It feels like too much. I don't want to owe you, asterisk. Charles looked at her gently. You don't owe me anything. You've already given me more than money could buy. Asterisk. Months passed, and Clara's life transformed. She enrolled in classes, threw herself into her studies, and began interning at a children's outreach program. She was finally living the life she had dreamed of. But she never forgot where it started, with a simple cup of coffee and a small act of kindness. Asterisk. And through it all, Charles remained a constant presence. He visited the cafe less often now, but he checked in with her regularly, sometimes attending her presentations or simply meeting her for lunch. Asterisk. One afternoon, as they sat in the cafe where it had all begun, Charles said quietly, You know, Clara, I wasn't just looking for kindness when I walked in that day. I was looking for hope. I wanted to believe that goodness still exists in the world, and you proved it does. Asterisk. Clara smiled, her eyes warm. And I wasn't just serving coffee. I was holding on to the hope that small kindnesses still mattered. Turns out, they do. Asterisk. They raised their cups in a quiet toast. Asterisk. Years later, Clara would graduate with honors, going on to lead programs that helped thousands of children and families. Her name became known not because of wealth, but because of the change she brought into the world. Asterisk. And she always told the same story whenever someone asked how it all began. Asterisk. It started with an old man and a cup of coffee. I didn't know he was a billionaire. I just knew he needed kindness. And that one small act changed everything. Asterisk. Charles, sitting quietly at the back of the room during one of her speeches, smiled to himself. For all his wealth, he had finally found the greatest return on investment, the ripple effect of genuine kindness.